What's up, parents and plans? My name is Rabab. I am a lawyer at AP Lawyers, and today we're going to be talking all things parents and plans. Now, many people are familiar with separation agreements and marriage contracts, aka prenups, but not very many people know what a parenting plan is. So, what is a parenting plan? I mean, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is a plan with regard to your parenting. So it usually includes, important things with regard to your children, like how are you going to deal with parenting time? How are you going to deal with decision-making responsibility? How are you going to deal with travel when it comes to the children? It is a very detailed document that gets into the nitty-gritty of all these things. Now, sometimes for some people, a parenting plan is all that they need. There's no other issues arising out of their separation. So all they need is just a parenting plan to deal with how they're going to, handle their children. In some other situations, they have all the other issues as well. So they draft a separation agreement to deal with the other issues, whether it's, equalization, spousal support, all that good stuff. And then they draft a parenting plan as kind of like a schedule to the separation agreements. So again, you can do either of these. It's whatever, again, makes the most sense for you and your situation. Now, let's get into it. What are the things that we need to include in a parenting plan? I already mentioned parenting time. I think that's a bit of an obvious one. Where exactly are the children going to live? Who are they going to live with? How much time are they going to spend with each parent? Now, in this situation, it would be whether it's, primary care with one parent and secondary parenting time with the other parent. So the other parent gets to see them every other weekend, maybe once during the week for dinner or an overnight during the week. Again, it would be whatever schedule makes the most sense. Or maybe it's a situation where it's shared parenting and, each party gets them every other week or to 223 or 2255 or one parent gets them every weekday and the other gets them every weekend because that's what makes the most sense for their schedule. So parenting time would kind of reflect what makes the most sense for you and your family. With regard to holiday parenting, that's also something that we need to consider for long weekends and things like that. So maybe Thanksgiving is more important to one parent than the other, then maybe that person would get Thanksgiving every year. Or if it's a situation where it's equally important to both, then we do a situation where one parent gets the children in the even Thanksgivings and the other parent gets the children in the odd Thanksgivings, So, and that's what would happen for a lot of the long weekends. So, Thanksgiving, Labor Day, Canada Day, all that good stuff. Now, with regard to other longer holidays, so like the Christmas break or summer or March break, again, that would be what makes the most sense for you. With summers, what I find is that most people just stick to their regular schedule, and then they have maybe 1 or 2 weeks that regular parenting time would be suspended, and then they would have the children for that whole period of time. So obviously, if you have a week about schedule, that wouldn't really make that much sense for you to just get 1 week where you're parenting with the child and the other person doesn't get to see the child because that's already what's happening anyway. So again, summer schedules would kind of be again what makes the most sense for the parties. With March break, what I find in some situations is that some people decide to split March break. So one party will get the child from, the end of school on Friday to like noon on Wednesday, and then the other person will get the children from noon on Wednesday until school resumes on Monday. In some situations, some people are like that doesn't make sense. They're just going to have the whole week, especially if the parties don't live in the same province. Then split in a halfway wouldn't make as much sense. And then one person gets them for the whole week, and then the next year the other person gets them for this whole week. Same with Christmas. You can decide to split in the middle. You can decide to continue with your regular parenting time. It would be whatever makes the most sense for you. Mother's Day, Father's Day, what many people do is that the honored parents would have that whole weekend from Friday up until, Monday morning or, any variation of that. In situations where, for example, there's two mothers, what would happen in many of those situations is one mother would get Mother's Day on this year, and then the other mother would get parenting time on Mother's Day in the next year. So again, with parenting plans, just like with separation agreements and marriage contracts, you have to like make them fit you, make them work for you in the way that would make the most sense for you. Virtual parenting is something else that needs to be addressed. If a parent doesn't have primary care of the child and only gets to see the child every other weekend, for example, they might want to, have a quick FaceTime or a quick Zoom call with the child during the time of the other parent. Or if it's a situation where it's equal parenting and you only get to see your child every other week, so you're going one whole week without seeing your child, that's something that you might want to consider. Maybe you have a phone call with them every other day for 15 minutes to check in. Hey, how are you? How is school? Did you finish your science project? Those types of things, just to check in with them and see how they're going. Um, Parenting time with grandparents is another thing that a lot of people like to discuss because, they have very close relationships. The children have very close relationships with their grandparents, maybe cousins, maybe aunties, maybe uncles. These are things that you might want to include in there as well. For blended families as well, this is also something that I recommend for people to include in their agreements. If there is, a particular step sibling or a particular half sibling that the child has a very close relationship to, maybe carve out some hours where they'll spend with that particular person in your parenting plan. The next, I think, obvious one would be decision-making responsibility. Who's going to be making the big decisions with regard to the child, health-wise, school-wise, things like that? Is it going to be a situation where it's joint decision-making responsibility between both parents, or one parent gets decision-making responsibility, period, or one person gets decision-making responsibility and has to inform the other party or consult with the other party before they're allowed to make the decision? Again, what makes the most sense for you is what would go into this. People also like to include a social media protocol, which I think is smart because, I mean, we're in the day and age of social media where everybody has a Twitter account, or should I say X? Everybody has an Instagram account, TikTok account. Many parents become very protective of this for good reason. And so they decide that they don't want their children to be on any social media until a certain age. That's also something that you can put in the agreement so that both parties respect that. So you're not worried of like, oh, they don't have TikTok in my house, but maybe they have TikTok in the other parent's house. That's something that you can put into the agreement when both parents come to an agreement and are able to say, okay, yeah, we agree that our child should not be on any social media until they turn 14 years of age. So that's something that you could also put in the agreement. New partners is another very touchy one that I always like to add in agreements as well, because certain people feel certain ways about their former partner having new partners and introducing the new partner to the child, which again, with good reason sometimes, because you don't want people to just be introduced to the child on and off. So many times what happens is that sometimes people are like, listen, unless you've been in a relationship with this person for 6 months, I don't want them meeting the child. Or I would like to meet this person first before, they're able to meet the child. Again, some people unfortunately use this as kind of like a weapon, which shouldn't be the situation, because the paramount consideration at the end of the day is what's in the best interest for the child. So again, these clauses would be what makes the most sense. And I know I keep saying this is what makes the most sense, but that really is the case. It is what makes the most sense. Another thing I like to recommend for parties doing a parenting plan is using an app. So AppClose, Two House, Our Family Wizard, these are all really fantastic resources that people can use to communicate with the other person about the children. Now, with text messages and WhatsApp and things like that, what happens is people can delete messages and they can edit messages, which can be it's not great, because then what happens is that they could be like, oh, I just never said that, and it's deleted, and now you have no evidence of like this or that happening. But on AppClose and all these other apps, that's not something that happens. Whatever text message is there it's there. You can't really delete it, you can't really edit it. And the great thing about AppClose, I find too, and I don't know if it's a psychological thing, but I've seen this happen in some of my matters where people know that because a court has maybe recommended AppClose or somebody has recommended AppClose, they know that this is the app that they're going to be talking on about their children. So I find that sometimes, not all the time, sometimes it forces people to be on their best behavior when they're speaking on these apps. So they're like a lot more they're a lot more focused and a lot more polite when they're having conversations on these apps, as opposed to texting people or emailing people insulting and inflammatory things. So an app is something that you might want to consider. Religion, culture, language, ethnicity, and heritage is another thing that you might want to include in the agreement, in terms of, if you want the child to be baptized, if you want the child to go to certain type of like religious schools. That's something that, you want to like include in this agreement as well. Is it going to be a situation where both of you have agreed that, the child is going to be raised, let's say Catholic, for example, and like, the child has to go to mass every Sunday? Or is it going to be a situation where only one party cares about the child being Catholic, so that person can take the child to school can take the child to mass, sorry, on Sundays, but the other party doesn't have an obligation to do that? Again, this section will be crafted in what makes the most sense for you. Is the child indigenous? Does the other person, have an obligation to like maintain their identity and let them know where they're from and things like that. So these are all things that can be included in the agreement. Travel is another very important one in terms of what kind of what do you want with regard to travel? Do you want a situation where both parties need the consent of the other before they're able to travel? Or maybe only one party needs the consent of the other before they're able to travel and the other can travel without consent? Or maybe neither party needs consent and just needs to tell the other party, hey, I'm going to be traveling to the kid to Italy. I'm going to be traveling with the kid to Italy for in the next 30 days or something. And you just need to give them notice. In all situations, though, what's usually recommended is you send the other party a like detailed itinerary of what's going to be happening. So, like an emergency phone call where there can be reached, email if possible, the hotel that you're going to be staying at, or the address of family members or whoever you're going to be staying with, the flight number, the flight information, times of takeoff, landing, and things like that, just for the other parties. Um, um, Peace of mind and for your peace of mind as well if you're the non-traveling party. um Moves and relocation is another thing that would be included in here. Most times it is recommended that the parties live close together to proper facilitate parenting time and decision-making responsibility. So if that's something that needs to change, then that's something that needs to be discussed by the parties. And that's also something that obviously needs to go into the agreement. Some people also like to add clauses for review of the parenting plan because I mean the needs of a 2-year-old are very different from the needs of a 12-year-old. So maybe as time goes on, this agreement doesn't really work for you anymore, and you need to come up with something that works better for you and for the child. I also like to add in clauses with regard to dispute resolution. So whether it's a parenting coordinator or a mediator or an arbitrator, or if you guys just decide you want to go straight to court, which is obviously always an option. So I hope that kind of just gives you like an idea of what goes into a parenting plan and things that you should consider when drafting one. You never know. Maybe a parenting plan is exactly what you need, and like getting it as detailed as possible is, what may be in your best interest. I always just say though that people should try if possible, because it's not always possible in certain situations, but try to maintain a flexible approach to it at all times. So I hope that answers all your questions with regard to parenting plans. Please let us know if you have any more. Take care.